Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to share with you a powerful truth that has the potential to liberate and empower each of us. You will never be perfect. In a world that often demands flawlessness and impeccable standards, it's easy to fall into the trap of striving for an unattainable ideal. But what if I told you that perfection is not the goal? What if I told you that your imperfections are not obstacles but stepping stones to growth and resilience? Embracing the fact that you will never be perfect is not about settling for mediocrity. It's about accepting yourself unconditionally, flaws and all, and recognizing that true greatness lies in the journey of continual improvement. Today, let's explore how embracing your imperfections can lead to greater self-awareness, authenticity, and personal fulfillment. What actions could you do to better yourself? Let's start by taking a step back. Perhaps the first thing to ask is, why should you even want to get better? The reason for that, in my opinion, is either to spare you from needless suffering, or, maybe more importantly, to spare others from needless suffering. That kind of stuff, when there seems to be a genuine injunction at the base of it. It's not a lighthearted self-help philosophy. The reason is that improper self-organization will cost you dearly and negatively impact those around you as well. You could reply, well, that's not important to me. However, that is untrue in reality. You will care about that if you're in agony. Thus, you really do care about it. Therefore, you are concerned about it, even if it is only in a bad way. It's quite uncommon, to find someone who is in unbearable pain and who would ever say, well, it would be no better if I was out of this sort of pain. This is one of those things that incontrovertibly brings up the concept that it would be better if it didn't exist. You gather your composure in order to prevent unnecessary suffering from others around you. That being said, one may wonder how one might go about getting their act together. Additionally, the response to that is also a phenomenological concept. It goes something like this. Find something that irritates you and try to solve it. You now consider, well, let's say that. Suppose you enter A. This might be done in a room. It's a lot of fun to do. You can simply sit and contemplate it while in a space, perhaps your bedroom, and ask yourself, well, what would I have to do if I wanted to spend 10 minutes improving this room? Isn't that something you have to ask yourself? It's not an order. It seems like a sincere inquiry. Things will also appear in the room. For example, there's a stack of papers there that's bothering you a bit. Perhaps a little order there would be beneficial. Furthermore, you haven't. You've been ignoring the trash behind your computer monitor for the better part of 6 months. In addition, the space would be marginally better if the cords weren't all twisted up in the same spot and there was a bit less dust in it. And like if you just give yourself permission to think about the space that you currently occupy, a lot of issues will surface that you could easily resolve. I could tell you that organizing your room would be the simplest thing for us to do initially if you were coming to visit me for psychotherapy. Is that psychotherapy, you wonder? The response is, well, that depends on how you define the boundaries of who you are. Moreover, I advise you to begin where you are able. If anything indicates to you that it has to be repaired, which is an odd way of looking at it, that it could be repaired, then by all means, fix it. If you make 100 such fixes, your life will be very different. I also advise folks to make changes to the things they do on a daily basis. Because, people usually consider those to be unimportant. You wake up, clean your teeth, have breakfast, and so on. These are the daily rituals that you follow. That's probably half of your life then. And people believe that they are ordinary. They don't require my attention. Like, no, that's completely incorrect. Without a doubt, the most significant tasks you do are those that you perform on a daily basis. You only need to complete the math. You immediately figure it out. With 100 changes to your larger realm of existence, there will be significantly less trash in the environment, and traps for you to fall into. Thus, that aligns with Jung's concept of deleting the negative. You can expand on who you are willing to accept as yourself and begin making the necessary corrections after you have your thoughts and feelings under control and are acting accordingly. You may not always know how to accomplish it, though. Imagine, for example, that you are strolling down Bloor Street and you see this guy who has been living on the streets for 10 years and is like an alcoholic and crazy. He stammered in your direction and mumbled something that wasn't quite right. You should really figure out how to correct it, but you honestly don't know how. You simply stroll past that and look for something to mend, because if you get involved in that, there's a high chance that you'll injure yourself in addition to the slim chance that you'll help the other person. You know, just because something tells you that it needs to be fixed while it's happening doesn't imply that you should fix it right then and then. You know, you don't just go up to a helicopter that isn't operating and start fiddling with it. You have to have some humility. You must adhere to your area of expertise. However, the majority of the time, it's a really fascinating thing to do when people examine their lives. That's nice, because you can do that at any time. I enjoy the idea of the chamber. You return home, you sit down, and you decide to improve your living environment for 30 minutes. How should I proceed? Do you really need to ask? And something will suddenly appear out of nowhere. And it's partially due to the peculiar nature of your intellect. Give it a name and a sincere goal, and it will reorganize the world to achieve that goal. In fact, that's how you initially perceive things. You must therefore be sincere about it, especially if you make it a task. For this reason, you must gather your feelings and thoughts and then put them into your body. Thus, your behavior is consistent. You have to genuinely want this goal. However, once you aim, the world will reorganize itself to accommodate that objective, which is both technically true and extremely odd. The best illustration of it is this film that you have all seen, in which players from the white team and the black team alternately toss basketballs back and forth. A gorilla appears in the center of the video while you're filming, but you can't see it. It seems that if you contemplated the experiment for around 5 years, that would be a reasonable duration to consider it, because it demonstrates that you can see your goals. And that would be a nice one, guy. If there's one thing you can take away from even attending university, you can see your target. You could therefore conclude from that to aim carefully. Isn't that right? The way the world presents itself to you depends on your goals. Therefore, one question to consider is if you are going for the correct thing, if the environment is presenting itself in a very negative manner. If my memory serves me correctly, the piece I read did not contain the captain's biography. While I may not be entirely accurate, I believe I have the main plot down. They did, however, have a shipwreck in Antarctica. Then, they spent an entire year in Antarctica, and not a single one of them perished. Not even one. He didn't lose one man at all, not even one. He made everyone feel good. And after that, using the boat that was on board, they traveled over an estimated 400 miles over the world's roughest, coldest ocean. You stay out of that ocean. Subsequently, they arrived at an island and strolled around it, traversing these mountains that have never been climbed by anyone else. They then traveled to the island's opposite city, where they obtained a boat, and they proceeded to save their fellow citizens, all of whom made it out alive. It seems as though the title of the book is Perseverance. After reading that novel, you realize that people are incredibly resilient. That's just absurd. Who knows how resilient you are then? Perhaps you discover your toughness by venturing outside to see how strong you are. You take on a challenge that you believe you can conquer but is just a little bit out of your reach. And after you do, you become a little tougher and realize, hey, that worked out pretty well. You become even more of a monster as a result. Subsequently, you venture out and encounter an even more formidable obstacle, and you consider the possibility that you could overcome that as well. And suddenly you can, and your size increases slightly. God alone knows your personal boundaries. You discover your own by testing yourself against the outside world. Now let's take a moment to discuss friendships. If someone is your buddy, you can tell them bad news and they will listen, which is how you can tell. They refuse to explain to you why you're foolish, why that awful event occurred to you, or how a worse thing happened to them once, since it would completely ruin the conversation. They will actually listen to you when you break unpleasant news to them. Thus, that is advantageous. And here's something much stranger. When you share good news with them, they will join in your celebration. And that's a really smart method of choosing your social circle. Because when someone is close by, good things happen to you, and you're a little hesitant to acknowledge them because, well, thank God, good things do happen to you. It seems that if you make that known, it will undoubtedly be taken away. You sort of come out and tell someone that something good occurred to you, but only a little bit. After giving you a hard blow, they start talking about the amazing event that happened to them, or worse, the amazing thing that happened to someone they knew 3 years ago. You know, it's like, leave that individual alone. They don't benefit you in any way, and they don't benefit themselves either. You need to consider this when you wish to surround yourself. It's essential to surround yourself with positive people who are invested in the greatest aspects of you. You can associate with liars and losers who are attempting to undermine you in order to make excuses for their own downward spiral. The benefit of it is that you can all complain about how miserable life is, and you don't have to take on any responsibilities. So that's really appealing. But in the medium to long run, I think that's also a horrible plan. Therefore, you should make an effort to surround yourself with people who are helping you grow. You may think, well, I have people around, but this is both acceptable and desirable. They are well known to me. They don't fit into that group, and they're not doing all that well either. What's your purpose exactly? Specifically, what are you intending to do with them? It will be great if they listen to you, work with you, and take steps towards a brighter future. Saying that you should just live with your unhappiness might be the right thing to do if they don't listen to you. Keep doing the same awful things over and over. Don't go away and cause you pain. I'll go live my life, and maybe when you wake up someday, you'll realize that's a better way of living than just putting up with it. I believe that's referred to as enabling. When you tolerate that kind of behavior, you're essentially endorsing it with your tacit support. Like, that's not a good idea. I would argue that you have an obligation as well as a right to surround yourself with positive people who enhance your best qualities. People frequently put off participating in the future authorship program when I bring it up to them. It's hardly unexpected, given how difficult it is. However, it goes beyond that. They believe, well, I'm not very good at writing. I'm going to perform poorly. Assignments aren't exactly my thing. I'll have to execute it flawlessly. I'll have to wait till I have enough time. I think that one of those will be plenty to clear your cold, and you're just done with the 5 of them. That's why I advise people to do it badly, clumsily, and little at a time. You can achieve that. I advise my students to write an extremely poor first draft of their master's thesis. After that, we have a brief discussion about it since they don't believe I mean it, and it seems cliched in some way. It's not corny. It's not at all cliche. It implies that you're a bad writer. Even though it would be awful, you would sit down and write it if someone placed a gun to your head and threatened to shoot you if you didn't finish your 100-page thesis by Monday. The problem is you already have it, don't you? After that, you have something that you can fix. You can correct it by iterating. What's most valuable is that awful first draft. That's what you therefore require. You must write a poor initial draft of yourself. And you know that Jung had a theory about the trickster, the jester, and the comedian? That the prankster is the rescuer's forerunner. That's one of the simple lessons I took away from Jung. It's so improbable that you would never consider the possibility that it may be true. However, there are also the ironic, satirical, troublemaker, comedian, and stupid. The fool is the one who comes before the rescuer. Why? For when you start something new, you're a fool. As a result, you will never start anything new if you are unwilling to make mistakes. You cannot grow if you never make any new beginnings. Therefore, the first step toward transformation is being willing to be an idiot, and humility is the same as that. Thus, you might perform poorly on your first assignment if you intend to change your fate. The further you travel, the more intelligent you will become. That's the issue. Is that accurate? Something draws your attention. This is the actual situation. At least it was a star, right? Perhaps the one that Geppetto wished upon was the incorrect darn star. It was in the sky at least. It advanced him at least. You claim that anything in your life captures your attention and makes you wonder, should I do that? And if not that, then something is the response. How about if it's an error? It's an error, don't worry. How much do you know? You're going to make mistakes, am I right? And this is what's going to take place. You will relocate. You will not remain in a state of stasis. You're not going to take a meandering path. And that's how I perceive people. I never knew what to do, they remarked. I'm 40 years old now. That seems like it might not be good. That's not very favorable. You may argue, however, that research also indicates that people are far less content with their lives when they reflect on the things they chose not to do than they are with the blunders they made while acting. Considering that there can be redemptive errors, there is something else that is well worth considering. Additionally, a redemptive error would be an error you commit when attempting to accomplish something. You truly do know this. You decide, all right, I'll give it a shot. When you're not skilled at anything, you make a lot of errors. It's like you're not quite as foolish anymore if you pay attention, is the effect. The fact is, you have told you of this by the consequences of your mistakes. Consequently, you become blinded by following the light or the beacon. Thus, you are unaware of the location of the light. It's just vaguely detected and you're scared to pursue it. However, you choose to make some clumsy progress in that direction. And because of the nature of your experience, you're pushing yourself beyond where you are and entering a nation you haven't been to before. You get lighted, enlightened, and informed as you stumble toward it. You also learn something along the way. The star then moves as a result of this. You approach it from 10 feet away and realize, no, that's not right. I made a mistake in it. It's not present. It is in fact present. After that, you notice it somewhere else, so you make a small adjustment and continue on. And that's exactly what happens. You keep going even as you evolve. The object that directs you moves, correct? It's similar to God being the light pillar you follow in the desert of Egypt. It is in motion. That is not a long-term issue. It moves away from you as you walk toward it, guiding you onward. So you ask, is paradise itself what I'm looking for? And no is the response to that. Since you don't know anything, even if paradise was directly in front of you, you might catch a glimpse of it. Thus, you advance in its direction and develop, and you see a tiny bit better the next time you open your eyes. And that's what actually occurs. That is, it just keeps happening. It doesn't stop moving. You thus move in this manner. You say, but what's really cool is that every single one of those zigs and zags is a catastrophe. I ran into a brick wall. Oh God, I had to die for a little while after that, and I hardly made it back up. Every time there's a phoenix change, every time a turn comes. It hurts too. However, the fact that despite covering a distance of say 20 you have only advanced 3 miles. This is because, should you remain motionless, you will inevitably fall backwards. The world is moving away from you when you remain motionless. Thus, you can't stand still. Additionally, there is just the reverse. And this, therefore, you are moving. You are not moving forward again. And that's even more of the Matthew principles' fundamental reality. More will come from those who have nothing to those who have everything. Everything is going to be stolen. It serves as a caution. Avoid sticking to one location. Well, perhaps the cataclysm of each transformation begins to diminish as you zigzag. Not all of you has to perish for every error you make. And perhaps in the end you become orientated, if not quite correctly. And that would have been your trip if you were sane. Correct, but it wasn't. That's what it is. And maybe the situation is far worse than that. Maybe there's no shortage of detours. It doesn't matter though, since you enlighten and educate yourself as you blunder forward. That could be in part because the universe is composed of information, and if you come across it and interact with it, it informs you, which in turn makes you knowledgeable, organized, and prepared. It's okay to be terrified to take chances and go after meaningful goals, but it's better to be afraid of staying still. It seems like the first thing you want to do, if anything is making you unhappy, is to give up on the notion that you can have any kind of stability that isn't contingent on your capacity to adapt and compete. With kids, the problem is the same. It feels as though your unhappy sitting there is a cost. Well, the devil I know is better than the devil I don't, you might argue. Like, don't put too much stock in that. Time is running out. Furthermore, you will be much older and far more miserable in 5 years if you stay in your current horrible employment and make no changes. I'm not speaking about what brings you joy, though. The freedom to follow your happiness is a luxury. It is morally required of you to pursue your interests. And it's not easy despite that. It might need giving something up. In the event that changing jobs is also necessary, let's assume you have a family, kids, and a mortgage. You have obligations. You've already taken on those obligations. You can't just declare, I don't like my job, and get away with it. I give up. That's not a tactic. However, you might have to consider whether or not this work is killing your soul. Okay? Then what must I do to address that? I guess I'll have to hunt for a new position. Well, I'm not getting hired. It's like, well, perhaps you should learn more. Perhaps you should update your resume and curriculum vitae. Perhaps you should get over your interview anxiety. Perhaps you should work on your social skills. Similar to you, these are items that require strategic thought. If you decide to change careers, you must act like a responsible, wise individual. It could require several years of work to complete that correctly. It is, in my opinion, more crucial to have an ethos or ethic. As we wrap up our time together, my friends, please remember this. It's acceptable to not be perfect. The things you do and how well you perform do not determine your value. Instead, it's defined by your bravery in showing vulnerability, your strength in dealing with failure, and your determination to improve yourself. Look at your flaws as chances to learn and improve. No matter how tiny, you should be proud of your accomplishments and gracefully humble yourself when you make a mistake. Keep in mind that the point of living is not to achieve perfection, but to find and develop oneself. With that said, take a fresh feeling of self-acceptance and love with you when you depart from this place today. Take pride in your flaws since they show that you are human and have room to improve. Have faith in yourself, appreciate your individuality, and persistently pursue greatness with empathy and resolve. You have my deepest gratitude for coming along on this path of introspection and development. In this shared quest for greatness, let us embrace our flaws as necessary components of who we are and work together to build a world where honesty and tolerance are paramount. Incredibly great things are within your reach. You are deserving, sufficient, and worthy. Accept and even celebrate your flaws. These are what will drive you to achieve your goals.